This is another episode on building the Volga, Volga plus Bugatti. These are the two cars we decided to combine, and I must say we've made quite some progress. Enjoy watching. So, in the previous episode, we concluded that the front pillars do not fit into our concept at all, and we were forced to remove everything and start over. First of all, we got hold of this thing, with which we will bend pipes, and from the pipes in turn make the frame.
To bend the pipe properly, you at least need to be able to count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Moros. Now we move the pipe to another point which is predetermined. Repeat the exercise. 1, 2, 3, finished.
And so on, centimeter by centimeter, pipe by pipe. As you can see, this is done manually. The main task here is to get them absolutely identical, 2 arcs, so that the body is correct and symmetrical in the future. Therefore, after each operation, we estimate one pipe against the other and adjust based on the result. We estimated this shape by eye based on the height of the car we need to achieve later. But looking ahead, I'll say that we miscalculated here too, but the guys are not aware yet. Let's not distract them. In the end, after a few hours, we have a pipe of such a shape that it fits securely into the cavity of the factory stand slightly. We tack it with welding and check the symmetry using a laser level. We understand that everything is okay, which means we can weld everything thoroughly. We also weld the pipe thoroughly in the front part. In such hard-to-reach places, it's difficult to weld everything thoroughly, but with the help of a grinder, the hard-to-reach place becomes quite accessible, and you can continue welding. In the rear part, we weld the pipe near the strut onto a previously reinforced platform. The next step is to thoroughly weld the structure at the cut of the factory strut, simultaneously adjusting the metal and doing so from both sides. After everything is welded securely, we take a control measurement, slightly adjust the shape using a jack and fit the template. Overall, we are very pleased with the result, still unaware that we will have to redo everything. As you understood, this project is being assembled piece by piece, without any instructions. It would of course be great to receive a detailed description of what we need to do, step by step. But unfortunately, we don't have such a feature. The next step was to place the fiberglass shell onto the frame, and it became clear that the struts need to be adjusted slightly inward into the cabin. We did this using a ratchet strap. For now, everything suits us. The struts are straight and parallel, and we secure them with this kind of partition. Then Valera refined all the details and nuances to perfection with his characteristic meticulousness. We cleaned, sprayed some paint, and moved on. In general, we cut out from 3D models which supposedly replicate the original Bugatti design this kind of element. This is supposed to solve all our issues. That's what we focused on. So in the end, the guys welded this frame which we thought would suit us. In the end, the frame is sloped, but the roof still doesn't fit correctly on it. We twisted, turned, took the car out, and observed. In general, it became clear that nothing was clear. In the end, we came to the decision that we need the original outlines of this opening from Bugatti. We cut out the original Bugatti opening and tried it on. Right now, our shell is positioned incorrectly relative to the horizon, because it rests on our fabricated pipes. Now we are cutting them off, aligning the horizon in our shell and starting everything anew. We attach the frame and then it becomes visually clear which direction we need to go. We figured out that these pillars definitely don't suit us, so we're removing the pillar pipes, resetting the form, and moving forward. Yes, of course all of this seems unserious. And now it seems obvious that we should have cut out the original opening right away. But all of this becomes clear only after a couple of obvious mistakes. As I said, we're not conducting masterclasses, we're simply telling our story. Yes, we often make silly mistakes, but we always acknowledge them and redo things. A couple of times, if necessary. We won't just roll over, we will achieve the result. At this stage, it's extremely important to achieve the correct proportion. Since later on, we will be dealing with all sorts of small details, like grills, lanterns, and various decorative elements. This is also very labor-intensive work, but if all this decor is made for an initially incorrect and disproportionate body, it will be a pitiful sight. That's why we need to achieve a result now, one that we can unanimously look at and say, it's beautiful.
In place of the dismantled frame, we carefully tack the braces again and securely to ensure the body doesn't deform.
So friends, let's summarize the 2-week results. What have we achieved in 2 weeks?
We started 2 weeks ago by trying to invent a frame using bending methods and ended up having to cut it off.
Through trial and error, we are confidently moving forward.
To move forward, we place the fiberglass shell. We align it precisely on the horizontal plane.
The main reference point here is the threshold.
It must be exactly parallel to the ground.
We tack the original outlines of the Bugatti door frame.
And here it's clearly visible what our problem was.
The pillar of the original Chiron body ends significantly further.
That's exactly why it has such a smooth, attractive shape.
Everything would be much simpler if we were just making a Bugatti replica.
But we are merging it with a Volga, and without any 3D model.
It's in such moments that hidden challenges arise.
In the end, after a couple of hours of adjustments and discussions, we reached a consensus.
And now it has become clear exactly what shape the frame pillar should be.
That's what we focused on.
Since it's exactly the same process as last time, we'll show the final result right away.
We need to determine where the roof ends and the windshield begins.
That's where we weld the pipe and move on.
I cut off the roof here, but maybe I overdid it. I don't know.
We need to position this
Somehow.
Valera served in the tank division, they say. Check there, how well you can see through this hole. The opening, I would say, is called a tank hole.
Let's check it now.
The view here is more than sufficient.
Well, everything else is clear visually.
After we got the arc we needed from the straight pipe, we cut off all the excess.
That's how, if you know, you see.
Like this, right?
So, shall we measure?
After the new, hopefully final, posts are in place, we put the Bugatti piece back on.
No, everything's great.
The opening looks cool now.
Well, I mean, I like this kind of buck rut style.
Well, roughly like in the concept. But we need to consider that a frame will be welded here, and the glass will rest on the frame.
To hide this sealant and frame, a black false panel is made.
And, accordingly, the visually transparent part of the glass will probably be like this.
And this is probably the full tank version.
Well, I don't know. Our tanker measured it with his eye. Says the snorkel, the sluice, or whatever that viewing hole is called, is fine.
For real.
I don't know, Sasha, I have this superstition that when you enter the garage, more work is added and some problems arise.
Dima, everything is fine here, but it needs to be redone. There's a sign here. Sanya the cat lives here.
I don't know, Valera. What do you think?
The tanker approved it overall.
No, the opening is great.
To avoid thinking about it popping out again, we cut this roof higher and make a frame on the pipe.
This is a roller, and then it will fit snugly.
Yes, the roof turns out to be everything. What do I think?
We definitely glue the roof, and then it can be trimmed.
I mean, well, whether it's the first time or the second.
But there's nothing to worry about here.
Andre has been working with fiberglass for over 10 years, so he can afford to cut off the excess with a margin, as he knows how to fix the situation.
That's exactly what he got busy with.
And here, by the way, it became clear why we had such problems with the pillars, which we redid a couple of times.
The fact is, the Bugatti body that we molded ended with the roof visor, which you can see on the screen. And there are practically no structural supports here.
Everything would have been fine if we had fixed this part onto the rigid body right after manufacturing.
But it lay in our garage for half a year, and the visor slightly straightened out, ultimately altering its original shape.
We missed this point and later started working based on the already distorted shape, being confident that we were working with the exact shape from the 3D model.
Consequently, nothing matched up until we made a template of the door opening and restored the geometry.
That is, we cut the visor in some places, pulled it together with screws, and moved on.
Before starting to restore the fiberglass, we thoroughly sand down the two surfaces and cuts to remove all steps, edges, and transitions as much as possible, while also preparing the surface for applying the compound. To put it correctly, we abrasively treat or simply sand it down.
First, we mix the polyester resin and hand the microphone over to Andre.
We mix the required amount of resin and proceed to glue our roof. We will perform the gluing in two layers. The first will be narrow and the second will be wide. We will achieve a smoother patch.
When the top has set, we will definitely reinforce it from the inside with a serious, large white patch.
I prefer to use a roller instead of a brush because the roller provides an even layer of resin. Firstly, and secondly, we immediately roll the fiberglass mat with it. Regular construction rollers for painting with acrylic paints. As you noticed, I have quite thoroughly sanded the repair area because no matter how you look at it, this area always expands and spreads. We will apply a fiberglass patch.
Next, we will putty this patch.
And if at first glance it seems that such a repair area will be sufficient, it inevitably expands later on.
We apply fiberglass mat over the primer layer of resin. Again, we saturate it with polyester resin.
At first glance, it may seem that there is not enough resin.
This opinion is misleading because you'll manage. Those were my little secrets.
We apply resin once and don't rush to conclude that the fiberglass mat hasn't soaked.
This requires time.
The fiberglass mat is bonded with a composition that dissolves in polyester resin.
But after a couple of minutes, the process will start, and this fabric will break down into its constituent threads.
Now we will demonstrate this.
You shouldn't mix large volumes of resin at once, because if you don't use it in time, the resin will boil very quickly in such a volume of polymerization.
That is, the hardening process will occur much faster than on this thin layer.
And you will see such a situation where the resin in this cup has already boiled and set, but your repair part will still be completely raw at first glance and at first glance.
At first glance, you might think...
There. Our fiberglass mat has already absorbed and the reaction has started and it crumbles very easily. Soon there will come a moment when it will be impossible to hold it with fingers. I'm holding it here by the dry part and here is the wet part. See how it is? That is, it is already completely unstable. And because of this, it is easy to work with. The first layer is already soaked. It's visually noticeable. We can apply the second layer. For soaking the second layer, much less resin is needed because it will get wet from the existing amount of polyester from the first primer layer. And we can see how the polyester changes color, which means the reaction is occurring. We have little time and need to move quickly. As I mentioned earlier, the polyester in the cup will just start boiling. It's a very dangerous thing. You can't leave such volumes of polyester, not epoxy, resin in such a cup because it can boil, catch fire, eat up, or burst. By the way, it could be demonstrated on camera. With the roller, we are also trying to remove the air that is visible on the surface. That is, these little bubbles. When working with the roller, the sound changes. Initially, it is dry. As the material gets wet, these bubbles pop, and the sound changes to a more muffled one. That's the difference between dry and wet. Do you hear it? None. In fact, you feel, hear, and even see the difference with your eyes closed when working with this material, especially without a respirator. Valera, please hand me fiberglass mat. Our repair is almost complete.
The patch turned out very smooth because we had the material prepared. And please note how widely we spread from the bonding point, yeah? Which is what I was talking about. Let's summarize. We sand more broadly, tear fiberglass patches of different widths. That's it. We work with the roller. In the final stage, we will go over it with the rolling tool Tolik. That one was called Valik, this one is Tolik. This is just for peace of mind as a precaution, so as not to disrupt the process. In the morning, when our resin has polymerized, it will be enough to lightly sand it. And this surface is already ready for further puttying. I like to use 2 different types of putty. And when we mix it, it will be clearly visible whether we have mixed the composition well. Mixing the putty requires proper attention, as it is a critically important step. When the color of the mixture becomes uniform, it indicates that we have mixed everything well and can proceed with the application. I like to use plastic spatulas and steel rulers in my work. The first layer must be thin, and we spread the putty at different angles to fill all the small pores. When working with a ruler, it is very important to apply strong pressure on the ruler. You should not apply putty in thick layers. It is necessary to apply the maximum number of thin layers with interlayer drying. To speed up the drying process, you can slightly warm the surface with a hairdryer, but never from above. Otherwise we will bake a crust and our cake will remain raw inside. We will warm it from the reverse side so that the part itself heats up and all the vapors from the putty evaporate upwards. It is very important not to overheat the surface, and it is better to measure with the back of your hand, as it is more sensitive. When the layer has set, it is not necessary to sand the surface. You can apply the second layer directly onto this semi-sticky dry layer.
In the meantime, the putty has dried and we are refining the shape. Here, for some reason, Andrei decided to use round sandpaper with a square block. But after half an hour, the solvent vapors dissipated. Andrei figured out how it works and things started moving along. Before moving on to finer sandpaper, we apply a guide coat. It fills in all the marks from the rough treatment, outlines them, and it becomes clearly visible where the scratches have already been sanded over and where more work is needed. And so it goes with each subsequent sandpaper grit. While the fiberglass body is securely fixed to the frame, we use an angle grinder to slightly adjust the edge to the shape of the arcs, as it was initially rolled out with some extra material. After the stock is removed, we move on. We unscrew everything that holds the Bugatti cover in order to remove it and work on the interior part. We roll out the car, then assemble a bit more of the car on the floor and get to work. These blocks, which fly in all directions, help to correctly position the two parts with each other, but we no longer need them. Well, then it's exactly the same process as on the front side. Andrei described the entire technology in detail, so we won't dwell on it a second time. Similar work was done here. So now we are sure that the shape of the shell and the arches fit perfectly together, which means we can confidently press the power frame. It would be more accurate to call it a safety frame. Most often such a thing is made in racing cars, and it is needed to preserve the living space for the car's crew in case of an accident. It is also used to longitudinally reinforce the rigidity of the body. Initially, safety frames were used in rally racing, but later their use became mandatory in other disciplines as well. It is made only from round tubes, as rounded sides are less likely to cause injury. Depending on the complexity of the frame design, different reinforcement options are possible, ranging from simple, arches over the heads of the driver and passenger, to complex, a spatial skeleton that integrates the front and rear suspension mounts, seals, and sides into a single power structure, as well as the safety cage of the cabin itself. We are supposed to end up with such an option. Here is a clear example of how such a frame works and saves lives. Of course, we are not planning to participate in races, and we are making the frame only because we completely cut off the upper part of the body, which did not fit into the project at all. Now we need to marry our pillars with the frame, as they currently have nothing in common. For this, we reinforce the plate, which is screwed on the door hinge, on which the door itself latches, with a small longitudinal reinforcement. That is, this is the cladding. It does not bear any, let's say, structural load. Here is the main reinforcement. It is made of thick metal, unlike the outer trim, and we tie it longitudinally with the same thick metal, first in this way, and then across the body with such a plate. Because in a car, the most structural points are the hinge attachment points. In the end, everything is clearly understandable here. Reinforced pads made of thick metal were created at the attachment points to the floor and strut towers. More detailed footage and unique materials from the workshop can be found on our Telegram channel. I decided not to make a straightforward copy of the channel on Telegram, so there you will find only unique material and daily behind-the-scenes content from the workshop. So I invite everyone and promise you won't regret it. In the finale, we attach the pipe at the rear part. It will replace the section of the frame and body that we discarded in the previous episode. And in the next episode, which by the way is already ready and will be released very soon, we will show a more or less concrete result. Here's a little spoiler. Thank you for watching and good luck with your projects. That's life in our workshop. There's no escaping it.